Hello, hello, hello. It is Thursday. Let me switch my camera. There we go. It is Thursday, May 29th. We have come to the end of the fifth month of the year. If you're like me, you are surprised. I keep looking up and thinking it's March and it's not. But the weather outside keeps telling me that maybe I'm right. Maybe it's March. It's been very rainy and dreary, but it's Thursday, and I'm thankful. I want to pause today and really give thanks. Had a tough week. Some unfortunate, really sad events happened last week, but I'm thankful to be here. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to join you every week and talk about education through the lens of power. Want to also encourage you to name specifically what you're grateful for and take the time to sit in gratitude because it's a game changer. It makes life a lot better and a lot easier to swallow. So I'm thankful for just life and the ability to be here. Welcome to another segment of Let's Talk Power Live. Who am I? I'm Dr. Tanji. I am the CEO and principal consultant of Liaison Educational Partners, where we work to ensure every student has access to and can really have a skilled leader and educator with the mindset, skill set, tools, and resources to ensure they get the excellent education they deserve. We focus on three main areas: curriculum, instruction, and culture. And we use the lens of power to help leaders and educators deeply understand the relationship dynamics in their environment. Here's what we know to be true: culture eats strategy for lunch. I'm sure you heard that somewhere. I've heard it. I'm saying it. If your culture is not where it should be, I'll say that. I took a pause to make sure I had the right word. If your culture is not where you want it to be and the relationships are rocky, looking at the dynamics within those relationships is an opportunity to revolutionize the state of your cultures. And so we look at power because power is a real thing. And even though we don't like to discuss it operationally in education, at Liaison Educational Partners, we take an operational lens to deeply understanding culture. And so let's get started with our time today. We've got a lot of work to get to. I want to just talk about the fact that preparation is still power. We have really been having a long conversation around data and testing and assessment, and some really interesting events have happened over the last week and a half. And so we want to talk about that today and really bring that conversation to life. And so here we go. You know what I'm going to ask you right away. Do you have your copy of the book? Do you have your copy of Let's Talk of Understanding Your Instructional Power? Understanding your instructional power is the basis from which we have this conversation every week. There are critical ways in which leaders at every level, and the classroom teacher is a leader, and a building leader, and a district leader, and a state leader in education. We're all leaders. You really do have a power lens, and it comes from someplace. And in this book, I walk you through how to understand where that power center comes from and how that power center is impacting and influencing the relationships you have, the decisions you make, and how students are experiencing your learning environments. And even though students experience the learning environment at the classroom level primarily, the stage is set at the state and district level. Therefore, it is incumbent upon a leader to learn about their power centers and where those comes from, because that's where their decisions are going to be grounded. And the other thing I'm going to ask you about, a couple things. Number one, have you subscribed to this channel? This is a new channel. You are bombarded with opportunities to subscribe and to share and to like. Well, I'm going to invite you to do that with me. If you're an educator at any level, you know that there are some opportunities for educators, and that field is growing. And I'm joining that field and ask you to join me to talk about power and education. So go ahead, hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and like today's session And then go one more step further. Share it with somebody else. Really want to get our audience growing and want to have you join this particular conversation. And so, what are our strategic moves? As I said and shared with you, we really do look at the intersection of three critical areas: instruction and culture and power. And we use a 5 frame power framework to really help leaders situate and restructure their environments for sustainability. And those are our strategic moves and how we love to engage with our partners. We really do take partnership as paramount to sustainable improvement and sustainable actions. And so we look forward to opportunities for you to join us and have us join you in your journey for sustainable improvement. So we've been on a really interesting journey, right? We have been talking a lot about assessment and how the way in which we look at assessment drives the environment and drives student learning. And so the first week we talked about data not being the decision maker, right? Data is not the decision. Data is the starting point. And we really wanted to make that point clear because a lot of times the data itself becomes the determining factor in the way children are marshaled through our system of education. And in that session, we broke down the importance of looking at data from an assessment perspective, but looking at data as an opportunity to build agency, particularly learner agency. We know students are usually on the receiving end of an assessment. They're very rarely, if ever, on the beginning side. They're not on the planning side for sure. They're not on even the execution side. They're brought in as the purveyor of, almost as though they're just there as a vessel. We want students to be at the center. If students are to be at the center of their education, as we outlined in the first week of this discussion, they need to be at the table that's going to decide the assessments. And we gave some really interesting tools to help support students in building their assessment agency. Then in week 2, we really talked about having patterns over pressure. This time of year is really marked by heightened levels of pressure to perform, pressure to really just look at outcomes as opposed to deeply understanding the learning aspects. And we gave some strategies and structures to support movement away from the panic and pressure and really to lean into preparation and planning and participation. We want students to be active, authentic participants in this process of their education. And so we outlined that. And then in week 3, we said data does not interpret itself. And in that week, I introduced our drive tool where we looked at data that is responsible, data that is responsive, data that is instructionally focused, it is valuable, and it is empowering. We looked at the framework because we understand again that preparation is power. And in this particular process, in this particular domain, it really matters how you take your lens. We want to move into how to ensure every person who is impacted along the highway of assessment is involved authentically, right? They're involved in a way that brings their humanity to the stage and involves them in a way. And then last week, we really spent some time talking about the need for leadership and how leadership is a lens through which the decisions can be made. And again, we extended the conversation about drive and focused on leadership drive, looking at how leaders can set the stage and create the environment by which each member, from an educator, a coach, and a student, can then take an active role and an authentic role in the assessment process. So those were the 4 weeks of our previous time together, really looking at this environment on assessment. And then we really talked about what the feelings from the field are. There's some real heavy feelings going on this time of year, a lot of mixed emotions, heightened sensibilities. One of the critical things that goes on this time of year is this heightened amount of cortisol that's running through our brain. We have, and you heard it before, we've got the flight, the fright, or the flee or the freeze response. That is a cortisol response in this little teeny tiny almond shaped thing in the back of your head called the amygdala. And the amygdala helps make the decision and the determinant of whether something is dangerous. The brain has one function. Its function is to keep you living. And if the brain detects a situation that might be dangerous, it's going to cut off the ability to be rational. And in this time of year, particularly for our young people, for our students, because of how we approach the assessment time, they are in a heightened sense of fear, and their brains are shutting down the ability to demonstrate how much they know. You might have a student who has performed really well all year on aligned materials, right? Authentically, they have been assessed, not inflated, but they have really been assessed the right way and have been assessed accurately. And this time of year, you might be seeing a breakdown. That will be primarily because cortisol is coursing through their system, cutting off their ability to demonstrate their knowledge and skill. We also talked about this idea that there's this prioritization of performance as opposed to proposing process, right? A purposeful process. We know what happens. We go through the boot camps, we go through all those processes, and we really are privileging performance over helping young people understand the purpose in the process. And that is some of the feelings that are happening this year. And also, there is this disruption of doubt, right? Really, really having these deficit frameworks that are fomenting disruptive doubt. Doubt is a normal time, a normal feeling, but because again of the high stakes nature of these assessments, the doubt is disruptive. And that's what's really been the feelings from the field this year. I was a classroom teacher for a number of years, and I still remember, to this day, I still remember these feelings. And when I talk to educators across the country, these feelings are coming out. They may not be stated specifically, but these are the emotions of the field right now. So let's talk also about what's happening at this time of year. It's called the year-end drift. Things are running amok in some places, literally. People are tired. They're worn out. They are ready for the end of the year. It's almost like when you're taking a long drive. Are you going someplace? You're very excited to be there. Getting there takes longer. And then when you're on your way back, because of familiarity, you feel like the distance has shortened when it hasn't. That's what this year feels like at the end of the year. So what's happening? Some routines are getting rushed. That anticipation that everything is going to be over soon might be causing some rushing through some routines. The reflections have become reactive. We're not really taking as much time. And here's why. There are a lot of activities going on. You have moving up ceremonies from kindergarten to first grade, from first grade to another grade. You might be at the middle school level. You got eighth grade going to high school. You might be at the fifth grade going into middle school. Lots of transitions. And so it might be taking less time to reflect, right? And the inclination is, let's just get through everything. That's causing a breakdown. It's causing a drift away from where you might have started. And then culture gets replaced by compliance. The solid pieces of your culture are just becoming compliant. And you might have an increase in punishment, right? Students might be getting punished more. You might be seeing an increase in school suspensions, out of school suspensions. The emotions are fraying, and that's what's causing the drift. And we talked about that over this last few weeks. And so want to just bring those up because as we approach the end of the year even sooner, you want to keep an eye at whatever your leadership level is. You want to keep an eye on this drift. You want to really think back through your routines. Where do you need to shore those routines up? Where is the reflection just becoming reactive or reaction? And maybe there aren't any reflections at all. And where is the culture slipping? Want to make sure that you end as strongly as you began. And so let's talk about what we're dealing with over the last week and a half. I think the news was exciting. And for me, it was also, I took a deep breath looking for another shoe to drop, right? So a federal judge recently issued a preliminary injunction blocking dismantling of the Department of Education. That right there, when I saw that, my first expression was, wow, this is fantastic. They're not going to be able to do it. But here's the next thought I had, and you might have it too. If we know anything about this administration, what we know is they are learners. And actually, we all could take a page out of their book. And here's what I mean. What I mean is they take great care in understanding why they did not get the outcome they wanted. They have a specific outcome. And when they don't get that outcome, they step back and they analyze. They actually employ our 5-phase process. They do some learning, they plan, they apply, they evaluate, and they integrate. They integrate what worked. And through their evaluation process, they go all the way back and they do some more learning, they do some more planning, and they do some more application. And eventually they get the outcome they want. Imagine if in our buildings, in our districts, at our state levels, we took the same idea about learning in this iterative process of learning, of planning, applying, evaluating, and integrating. And because of our 5-phase process, I paused because I was concerned that that's what they're doing, that the injunction wasn't necessarily going to be the end of the story, but that the injunction was going to be just a pause. And so let's walk through this. And I'm actually going to read some of what's happening and what they actually did. There's some key takeaways, right? So first of all, there were some key procedural flaws identified by the court. One thing was the lack of congressional approval. That was one thing. And then there was insufficient justification for staff reductions. And then there was a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. And I want to go through and actually read this to you, right? So right now it said number one was the lack of congressional approval. Here's what we know. The DOE was established by Congress in 1979. The judge emphasized that only Congress has the authority to abolish a federal department. So right then and there, that was mistake number one. They should have gone through the actual process, and they did not. There was a unilateral decision, a one-level decision making where the president issued an executive order. That was a violation of the congressional approval where they needed to have. The next thing was the insufficient justification of staff reductions. Over 1,300 employees were laid off with an additional 600 voluntary departures. So that's 1,900 staffers from a department that was just about 3,800 in size. The court found no evidence that these reductions improved departmental efficiency or effectiveness. Now, that matters because the whole premise, the claim was that there is waste, fraud, and abuse. So that claim of waste, fraud, and abuse was the impetus for getting rid of the 1,300 staffers and putting forth the act to dismantle the department that the judge found insufficient justification and insufficient evidence for, right? That was the Department of Government Efficiency said by doing this, we'll be more efficient. That was proven not to be justifiable. And then lastly, violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. And again, I'm reading this to you because I want to make sure that we are clear on the information here. So the APA requires federal agencies to follow specific procedures when making significant changes. The judge ruled that the administration did not adhere to these procedures, rendering their actions unlawful. So that is what happened that forced the judge to make this injunction. Now, the injunction is a stopgap measure. And what that means is there is an opportunity for this group of people who want to dismantle the Department of Education under the guise of waste, fraud, and abuse to go back to the drawing board, learn, plan, apply, and then evaluate again and integrate that which works and remove that which does not and do the process all over again. So right now we can celebrate because it feels like there's been a victory. And for a lot of ways, there has been a victory, and that's really important to consider. But there are some implications here, right? And I want to be clear about these implications from really all levels, right? Because there's a classroom implication here. There is a building, a district, and a state level implication here, but these implications really are at a leader level. Number one implication is temporary halt, not permanent stop. Remember what I said, this administration is masterful at really digging into where they made their mistakes and how to make adjustments, right? How to adjust so that when they come back through it, their likelihood of approval is going to heighten. Right now, this is a temporary stop. And what I've been saying a lot of places is pause gives us cause to prepare. We want to make sure that in this pause, we have the right causes to prepare for because we don't really know what may or may not happen. And then another implication is there is a need for vigilance and preparation. In April, I offered a free webinar to state leaders, really helping them walk through what the possibilities might be, right? Like where was there going to be a funding change, a communication change, a partnership shift, and a service breakdown, right? Where were all those shifts going to occur? And during that session, we allowed our participants to really engage in strategy and talking about what would be their next move should the department actually be dismantled. We're fortunate in that it has not been dismantled yet because of this injunction. We're in the pause phase right now. But in this pause, we still need to prepare. Why? And you've heard me say it, preparation is power. We don't want to get caught in their learning phase and then have to be back at a drawing board, having to get into that panic position. We want to make sure that we are prepared for whatever might happen, right? And so we want to look at this idea that, there's federal policy, right? A federal policy signals a change. So the winds and waves of change have already begun. There is a desire to dismantle the Department of Education. That desire has been temporarily stopped, right? And in this timetable, the change has been signaled. The states can interpret this wind, right? Interpret the shifts in the wind or not. You can see it as a victory and move on with the myriad other measures that you have and decisions you've got to make, or you can lean into this pause a little bit and think through what might be possible. And then districts implement what they're ready for, right? We know that every district really has a time and a timetable, their own initiatives, and then the classroom is going to feel the effects. The classroom feels the effects of the ripple from the federal government on down. What we don't want is for classrooms to suffer. There are so many other ways for classrooms to suffer instead of it being because as a leader, we did not take this pause period as a power tool to be prepared, right? We want to make sure we're leaning carefully, critically, and with great caution regarding how we move forward. And so, what does it mean for your drive, right? What are you going to drive for? And what are you going to sort of move forward in? And again, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you, see what you can see. This is our drive tool for leaders. This one is for leaders, but we have one for leaders. We have one for coaches. We have one for classroom educators and classroom leaders. And we have a specifically designed drive tool for students. Remember, we say we want students at the center. Our drive tool gives you another area to ensure students are at the center like you say you want them to be. Well, what does this mean, right? Drive, data that's responsible. Then you are responsive. It is instructionally focused, it is valuable, and it is equity centered and empowering. I know all of the drama around the word equity. Equity is a real word, equity is a real thing. You want to be mindful of how students are entering the learning environment and what access points they have. And if they don't all have the same level of access, you want to make sure they do. That's what equity is about. So, what does it mean when you are a leader and you're driving this sort of responsible way of looking at data that's going to help you in this pause where we are? You're going to ask questions about, did you really evaluate the right kinds of data, right? Are you really responding in the widest, broadest way possible? That's your responsibility. Going to really be looking at how you, as a leader, have positioned your coaches and teachers and students to make instructionally minded decisions based upon data. And then on the value side, valuable to the learner, valuable to the instruction. And then on the empowering side, how are you helping your staff, meaning coaches, meaning your other SLT members, and then your students? How are you positioning and preparing them to really internalize and make their own decisions about this data? And that's the question we want to ask ourselves, right? And then as we move to that, let's recap today. We really spent some time thinking through what is underway. And there's a lot, right? We're in a really interesting time right now through this temporary injunction. So there's been an attempt, right? The efforts to dismantle the Department of Education signal deeper intentions to shift federal support and oversight in education. That's been a big signal. They've been signaling that for months now, right? Months. And I will tell you, this has been a signal since the DOE started. So for decades, people have been trying to dismantle this thing that really does help young people across the country. And then the response has been right now, the response has been this temporary injunction to block this decision, right? To block this attempt. And then the real message is that legal roadblocks really can have implications for our classrooms, and we need to really get ready to redirect our efforts. And so, as a leader at any level, what can and must you do? First thing you got to do is, I'm just going to say it, use our readiness tool. Our tool is specifically designed to support readiness, a series of questions to have you think through funding, to have you think through communication strands, to have you think through partnerships, and have you think through service. So I want to get that into your hands. I'm going to give you a way to get that. The other thing you want to do is you want to revisit your commitment to equity. I'm going to say it again. Equity is a real thing. And I know in some places, the language, the linguistics, the word equity cannot be used, but you got to figure out how to make sure that your commitment to every student that you have the privilege to serve is getting what they need. And then lastly, you want to prepare, right? Not just for the shifts, but for the purposeful student-centered work here. We want students at the center. We say we do. Well, this is a way to get that. And how do we move forward with that? Well, here it is. This is the readiness tool kit right here. I'm going to make this bigger so you can actually see it. This is the QR code. Go ahead, scan this QR code. And then if you can't scan it, the link right here in your browser is right there. You can use this browser. You can take a screenshot of this, photograph it. Want you to make sure you have this tool so you at the state level can be ready for whatever comes up. And then announcement, I started dropping this out I think 2 weeks ago. We are offering on-demand learning opportunities. The first one for us, and we cannot be more excited. It's going to start in about 2 weeks. And what we're offering is an early bird special. It's $99, and we're going to offer a discount for those of you who want to jump on this summer learning early. And we're going to give you a coupon for that. And the information is going to be on our website. Here is our website information right there. You can go to our website and get information about our summer learning, and it's going to be fantastic. And then I always end with get your book. Go ahead and get your copy of Understanding Your Instructional Power. People often ask me, how can I partner with you? What kind of work do you do, Dr. Marshall? Like I said, we are in the business of ensuring students have access to and receive a teacher and a leader that with the right skill set, tool set, and mindset to make sure they get an excellent education. We do that through book studies. We do that through on-demand learning and keynotes, and we do that through partnerships with districts. And so please go ahead and contact us. We also do, I just didn't mention that one right here, we do curriculum analysis as well. Those are the areas that we work in. And go ahead, reach out to us and find out how we can partner with you and make your educational goals a reality. So thank you again for joining for another session of Let's Talk Power Live. Before we go, remember, subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for joining us today.